Hey, welcome to Playing for Keeps, the show where we take a deep dive into emotional intelligence, sex, love, adult attachment theory, mental health, therapy, and everything in between that creates great relationships. Your host, DJ, is a certified life coach and emotional intelligence practitioner. She's here to be of service to all the listeners interested in love and relationship. Now, here's your host, DJ.
Hello, everyone. This is your girl DJ with Plan for Keys podcast. I want to thank everyone who is tuning in today. Today, we have a special guest. We have Coach Razia. She has over a decade of sales experience in the corporate world and with startup organizations. She has a degree in cognitive science and is now an accredited transformational coach. She wanted to become a coach because this is her way in being the change in the world she wants to see. Razia's style of coaching is research-based and highly pragmatic. She develops actionable insight and delivers tangible outcomes. Her testimonials highlight of her deep empathy, her powerful insight, and intuition. Razia has a unique combination of SaaS sales experience, academic and spiritual background combined with a cognitive science degree and an accredited coaching qualification to make an amazing coach. Today, she is here to speak on dating, relationships, crushes, traumas, and breakups. Hey, Razia, how are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited, DJ. How are you?
I am doing pretty well. So today I see that you are here to speak on dating, in relationships, including touching on crushes, trauma, and breakup.
Absolutely. Yes. Excited.
Okay. Is this something that you work with on your clients on a regular basis?
Yes. So it's something that is part of my practice. I mean, typically, as a coach, my journey has only recently started professionally in this space, but I have had the pleasure of working with different types of organizations and different levels of authority. And what I found was that really what people needed was the ability to have discussions that concern their, say, personal life as well as their work life. And relationships, emotions play a huge part. So now I am focusing my coaching practice in two different genres. One is focusing on relationships, dating, and how we can show up better in order for us to design the kind of life that we want to have. And then the second one really is talking about anything that is work related and how we are setting goals, planning, and having a bit more of a strategy in order for us to achieve what it is that we truly want with the best interest at heart.
Okay, so like you said, you want to be the change in the world that you want to see. So tell us how you actually started on kind of your journey to becoming a life coach and wanting to help people just have a better life.
Thank you for the question. First of all, this process of wanting to be the change that I wanted to see was, first of all, realizing the responsibility that we have to take. I think even though I have been in sales for over a decade, I've worked in FTSE 100 companies to Silicon Valley startups. What I recognized was that there was still something that, number one, was missing, and number two, that just wasn't working in terms of the kind of results that I wanted to see in my life. And I felt frustrated, I felt angry, I felt hurt. And I feel like now that I have stepped away from work and looked at things in a bigger scale, I realized that I was living in a very filtered world. And I don't mean by social media type of filtering where you have kind of ways of looking perfect all the time. But I mean that in our lives, we actually are constantly putting on this act to show up for trying to be perfect, because that's what we think people want to see. We think
Right.
that people want to only see the best versions of us. So we put on this facade at work, we put on the suit, we put on the makeup, we, get our nails done, we speak in a certain way, we only share what we think is going to work in the stages of our life and what's really going to be accepted in that space, rather than really understanding and appreciating how we can approach the same mentality in a different way. And really what my plan around this was, one, to take full responsibility for everything that has gone wrong, and then develop actionable insight and delivering tangible outcomes by understanding where the cord was broken almost. And so that
Gotcha.
comes with understanding the difference between the empathetic side of your mind and the sympathetic side. And I think for the longest time, I was very sympathetic towards the way I was showing up. But
Gotcha.
once I started appreciating how empathy works and how I could show up for myself, I started to become extremely curious. And my curiosity led me to read a lot of books, to gain knowledge about everything from right to wrong. And then I started recognizing just how I was showing up, and it wasn't in the best way. So in
Gotcha.
order for me to see the change in the world, I had to create that change within myself. And that's where my journey began. And now that I have this degree that I hadn't practiced for over a decade, I have tons of experience in working with people. I decided to go and incorporate the coaching side of things from a very positive psychology and a progressive way that we can incorporate in our day-to-day lives and really practice being present with that, as opposed to really reacting to what life throws at us. I hope that this all kind of makes
Yeah,
sense.
that makes sense. So you're really big on like the positive psychology side. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how do you show people to show up in an authentic way? Like how do you go about coaching them to show up in that way?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for asking. I think it's understanding kind of, what is it that we're working towards? It's understanding that this is an investment towards your own well-being, and working towards a goal to gain a return on investment is extremely individual, right? So when, I'm using these sessions to work through, say, some of the blind spots or removing certain blocks, it's really about understanding that we don't need to go from 1 to 100. We can take the approach of going from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and making those small changes in order for us to get the bigger results. And so a lot of my work is concerned with relating to your personal and work life, and then relationships and emotions show up in the way that we work. So a lot of that around, a lot of my work is around, assisting with setting goals or having a plan that they want to work towards, and really trusting that they're making the decision that is best for them at that time. And what's interesting about coaching is that there's so many different types, but my type of coaching is less about giving advice and more about going on a journey with them. And I'm just literally facilitating the space and nothing more. I am almost asking the questions and giving them the time to understand what it is that's going on in their world. And then, as well as being on that journey, really asking them from a curious point of view as to where they want to go next, and where do they want to go, and what do they need to happen, and why, and the where, and the how. And then the questions just start unfolding.
And then they kind of come up with their own conclusions, right? In a way. Got
Absolutely.
you. Okay. Why do people get hurt as far as relationships?
That's a good question. If we are taking this question in terms of dating, the reason why people get hurt is when we're spot wiping left and right, and we have so many options, not just only men, but women also, we don't tend to qualify the people that we're about to go on a date with. So what we tend to do is we look at somebody's profile, we look at some of the ways that they have almost advertised themselves, from their pictures, their way of writing some of the more quirky stuff about what their life is like. But really, this is really coming at the back of how they feel without understanding what's right for me. So it's really reactive. Whatever comes in front of me on this specific app, because it's suggested to me based on algorithms, on me liking a specific type, the app will then create, kind of an understanding of what type of person I would kind of tick right. And then automatically, that's what I'm being presented with. But really and truly, what we're not doing is we're almost getting used to living with people with their unresolved traumas, without learning that there even is a trauma to deal with in the first place. Right. So we experience what we're familiar with, and then we word those things in terms of love, liking, infatuation, because that's how we received love. And when we were in our childhood, we might see different types of love by the way our mom always cooks for us, but never technically tells us that she loves us. Right. So we then associate that with how somebody shows up for us when they love us. But what we're doing it then, as we're growing up, is we're working on autopilot mode. So we come across the same attributes or the same characteristics, and then we think it's love because that's how we recognize it. So our heart beats fast, we get nervous, we get weak in the knee, and those feelings are valid. I'm not invalidating what you feel for an individual. However, if you're used to receiving love in a certain way, for example, you have both of your parents, they're both very much present in your life, but they were emotionally unavailable. That will go to show that that's the kind of relationship that you may be more attracted to. And what I'm trying to present over here in terms of why people get hurt is nobody prioritizes their own self-worth first. So being aware of yourself is extremely important before you go and swipe right on the algorithms that are presented in front of you because you think that's what you like. You haven't taken the time out to understand what you're settling for. You don't know any better. You haven't looked at yourself close enough. And the truth is 9 times out of 10, we don't even know what we want. We just kind of grew up learning, that women are homemakers, especially in certain backgrounds, that when a man is immature, us women have to take the responsibility and almost mold them into becoming, this responsible men, and we have to motivate them and bring out the best versions of them. There is so much pressure on women from a young age, and unfortunately, because we're growing up with being told that we as women have to take the responsibility and we can make a man really fall for us if we, say, for example, cook for them and stimulate them mentally and present their home in a certain way, that we actually get under that pressure. And then without knowing, or knowingly sometimes, we think that that's a safe space, and then that's exactly what we're growing up to do. And then we learn to like what's presented in front of us. And then we will start mimicking that behavior that our mom had at home. We will start creating the same safe space that we believe to be love.
Right. I can definitely relate to that. And that subject goes so deep, especially when you talk about people dating with just familiarity. I'm probably pronouncing the word. I totally butchered that word, but and on another podcast, I mentioned with my parents, they were present, but they were also very dismissive. And I would get into relationships with dismissive men. But for me, I would play in my I'd get hurt because the person was dismissive, but I was more attractive to the dismissive man versus the man that was more attentive, because that's what I grew to know what love is. Like my dad he still is a provider, but he's very dismissive. And I think as a young girl, I would try to earn his love. And I think that's what I used to try to play out in my relationships. I would try to earn this man's love. Going back to what you said too, as far as the self-love and self-worth, like I didn't know that I didn't have self-worth and self-love because that's what I was doing in my relationship. So That is very true on just even on other deeper levels. Like when you peel back the layers of it gets even deeper than the cultural thing of, you know, women making a safe space for men, and it gets real deep. Okay. Thank you for that. My question on breakup. So I know you said that, you know, we talked about why people get hurt in relationships. Um, when people break up, this is my question for you. So when people break up, and then instead of trying to learn themselves, just be by themselves and learn themselves, they jump into another relationship. Why do you think people do that?
It's a very good question, and it's something that I've been studying recently around attachment theories. And I share a lot of that kind of empowering yourself and becoming a self-healer through my Instagram at the moment, just because I think we are in full power of our minds.
Yeah.
But I just want to kind of share that attachment is a deep and enduring emotional bond that connects one person to another across kind of, say, time or space. And so this plays a huge role in the relationships, and something that I was intrigued by. And this is something that I'm sharing from my Instagram post, that by learning somebody else's attachment type, it can help change the dynamics of a relationship.
Right.
So there's 4 types that I'll cover right now, and it will help answer your question, and we can deep dive into that. But
Okay.
the first one is the avoidant type. So this is the one who ghosts in relationships,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the one, they hide behind the humor of sarcasm, and they don't really like to connect on a deeper level. So the theory suggests that whatever occurs in our childhood, as we've discussed already, is the reason why we behave in the way that we do. So one of the things that I mentioned was that your both parents were definitely there, but they were not emotionally available, which
Right.
means that now it's inherited almost. We've inherited to just keep people at arm's length.
Right.
And to not allow them to come too close to us. It doesn't mean we don't want a connection, but our idea of a connection is at an arm's length. And I personally can really relate to that one, because I think my perspective is that a point of understanding attachment theories is not just a fun conversation, but it's to understand which one do you fall in, and then how do you uncover that and then become to the one that you feel is ideal.
Right.
So I'll come into that a little bit later. But the second one, which is the one that I think you might be referring to, is the anxious type. They move from one relationship to another relationship.
Yes, they do.
They thought of not just being with you is going to make them feel like they can't breathe, but they unconsciously also want to control people that are in a relationship with them, because they can't, they fear their own suffering. So what they do is they tell you that you're actually experiencing that rather than them having that experience. So they are people that will threaten to self-harm, but they don't necessarily want to go through a breakup with you. They would much rather be in a bad relationship and suffer through that pain rather than being alone. So
Right.
they're obsessive. They, you know, the example that comes to my mind as I want to explain this is from the book called The Notebook, where, you know, the main character, I'm not sure what's his name now, but
He's Noah.
yeah, he would, if I was to describe somebody as the anxious type, the Notebook, he would be that individual, because his identity is purely based on what other people think of him rather than what he believes for himself to be. And
Now
so
I
he
gotta
does
watch that.
crazy things just to get her attention. And actually, sorry to break it to anybody who might be listening, because I know it's a wonderful, wonderful movie, but actually, it can be quite unhealthy to be attracted to something like that.
I gotta rewatch that movie to see if I think he relates to the anxious, because I'm familiar with attachment theory too. So I'm probably going to rewatch that movie today to see.
Fantastic. Well, that leads me to my second, well, my last two, which is the fearful type is rare to come across compared to others. So they're the ones that basically they tend to sabotage themselves. They're almost kind of a nice I shouldn't use the word nice, but they are a weird mix between avoidant and anxious type of people. Yeah. And I won't go into it too much, seeing as other podcasts I believe have covered this. But then the last one is the ideal one, which is a secure one. They realize that they have what it takes to kind of deal with pain and breakup. They are comfortable in conflict, but they're not afraid of abandonment either. Right. And so they keep calm when they disagree with somebody, and one size fits all doesn't work with them. And so the idea is that nobody really falls fully into one specific attachment type, but the idea is to really understand and appreciate what is going on for you. So one of the posts that I recently did, which got a lot of attention, was 50 Shades of Attachment and Trauma. And I talk about Christian Grey, and his relationship with Anna is seen as such a desirable relationship that actually he falls completely under the avoidant type. And so the fact that he wants to have a sexual connection, but he doesn't want to sleep with her. He wants her to say her full name. And more than anything else, there's a huge indicator that, you know, people with this type of attachment theory have a tendency to keep intimacy at an arm's length. So again, I'm only sharing this information around certain movies we grew up with because it's a very easy way for us to reprogram our minds without us even realizing.
Right. And that's something, you know, that's a big thing I talk about too, how movies and Hollywood have really shaped the way we think about relationships. And it's actually, in a way, it's very unhealthy because a lot of the relationships what's the word I'm thinking of? They basically don't display the secure attachment style because it's boring. I get it. You know what I'm saying? I think dismissives and anxious and the disorganized, fearful, they have their place in the world. So I get it. But yeah, the movies do not display the healthy relationships at all. Yeah, you're right.
Well, I'm happy to carry on, but like I said, for anybody who might be listening and is intrigued by understanding what their attachment theory is, it's really about educating ourselves or our partner's attachment theory type, and really it's for us to understand how we can unlearn some of the habits and also the insecurities that we've kind of embedded. And we do have the ability to override them with a lot of effort as an adult. We do. And so practice being aware of how you interact in relationships to determine what you'd like to improve. So determine what emotions you feel when you experience insecurity with a romantic partner. Is it anxiety? Is it anger? Is it disgust? And then diminish kind of what those interactions would look like. So some of the pointers or some of the ways to identify somebody who might have avoidant attachment type of kind of characteristics are people who set boundaries about their space. There's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing unhealthy about that. But it is one of the pointers of kind of somebody who does like to keep people at arm's length. Being uncomfortable with sharing deep feelings. So really being self-reliant, and they're not really allowing anybody to emotionally get close to them. Valuing independence, and unfortunately looking down on people that may not be as independent. I personally have experienced people saying, oh, you still live at your parents' house. My culture is as such that you don't really tend to move out unless if you're, married or there's a good enough reason, like you're moving out for university or whatever. But it's still something that comes up in conversations, as if, oh, really, you're still living? Like, it can come across as quite judgmental. So that's almost shaming somebody for their circumstances. They prefer casual sex. It's not the case with everyone, but they do prefer casual sex over a deep connection of sexually being intimate with somebody. And so it could be either that they are fearing of being abandoned or losing somebody, and so it makes them extremely clingy. That could be covered under anxious type, or it could just be that they are they're fearful of losing themselves, and then they make a huge distance between the person that tries to come close to them, and then that would be that typical avoidant type. I definitely feel there. in the avoidant type. And so I didn't realize that until I started studying this, that I have to create conscious processes to move myself from being so afraid of letting somebody in.
I'm glad you did, because that was my next question. Because if out of all the types, anxious would go to therapy if need be. A secure, if they needed to go to therapy with someone who maybe was a different type, or maybe if their other secure partner was having issues. And avoidant, you wouldn't find them in therapy at all. So that was going to be my next question. I know conscious, of course, being conscious and self-aware, but even sometimes when they're self-aware, they're still kind of in denial. So how would one go to therapy? Say if one was kind of self-aware, like they knew that they were kind of dismissive, but they didn't feel like they needed to change. What would change an individual like that? Or what would change an individual like that, you would think? Or is there just no way of changing an individual like that?
There's always a way to change individuals, but I think the more important question here is, how do you recognize that this is you, and then you need to overcome that? I just shared that I feel like I fell under the avoidant type, and the interesting question that you had was, how do people like that find themselves in therapy or not really? And I was definitely there. I struggled for a very, very long time. As a part of my accreditation, I had to also receive coaching. And coaching is a type of therapy. Even though it's progressive, you have to kind of touch on certain elements of your life to let somebody in for you to know what's driving you, right?
Right.
And for me, it took me nearly a year, I want to say, to consciously receive anyone to coach me. And it took me over 10 years to even recognize that I needed to change something about this, because I'm a typical avoidant type who would keep people at an arm's length. Okay. And that's because I don't want to get hurt. And so in order for before somebody can leave me, I leave them. Right. And so it's a typical avoidant type of kind of behavior, you could say. But because love can be so unpredictable during our childhood, attached people tend to seek out love and approval from others, whilst having less self-esteem and little awareness of being recognized by their own needs or what is a healthy relationship. Right. And I think that's what I lacked. I lacked self-worth. I lacked self-esteem. And, if this is somebody if these are the characteristics that you feel is you, you would have constant need to connect or be close to your partner, because that's the only way for you to understand that you're valid. Right. You feel anxious or insecure when your partner is absent, because you think that it's about you, not about them. So you automatically make everything about you. Are they absent because I said something? And you replay those text messages or those conversations over and over again because you think you're the problem. And so you're constantly reevaluating that. You might feel that you're unlovable or undeserving of love. So you could be keeping people at an arm's length because you feel like you just don't deserve it. You could be overly anxious to please other people with the thought of yourself. This pleasing of other people comes from constantly looking for acknowledgement from somebody outside of yourself. Right. And you constantly find yourself thinking about the past and keeping score and feeling abandoned. I mean, I could go on, but so for me, I would advise anybody who's experiencing some form of keeping people as arm's length is, one, start journaling, because that's just with you. Only you get to see that piece of paper. And in the beginning, I'll have to share, I wrote like 2 sentences and I was like, this is so ridiculous and stupid. I just don't feel like it just didn't come easy to me. It took me ages. So every single day I dedicated, even if it was a minute, to say, today is a sunny day, even if it was just that. And it was just ridiculous. And then as time progressed and I got used to the idea of dabbling into my own feelings, I started to write a little bit more. And I feel like it wasn't powerful. I then would look back at some of the things that I realized how far I've come. At the time when you're writing, you feel stupid, but when you look back at what you wrote, maybe say a month ago or 3 months ago, you realize just how far you've come. But you would never have known that if you hadn't recorded something that is just between you and yourself, rather than externally looking to your partner or to your boss or to your children or to your parents for that acceptance.
Right. I commend you. Like, I fall under, like, tests that I've done and research I've done, I fall under the fearful, actually. And journaling is very hard for me. I still haven't. I started, but then like you said, I feel really stupid. So I probably write a sentence and then that's it. So I'm still trying to get into that, but I am doing better with just being more in tune with myself as far as why I feel certain feelings. So I commend you for journaling and thank you for bringing that up, because I know that it is a good practice. If you're not comfortable with your feelings, it's a good way to get comfortable with yourself and your feelings, and to just have it out on paper so you can see for yourself. So no, that is a good way.
And there's another thing that I'd like to add that helped me, that if anybody else is feeling like yourself, or anybody that is struggling to get in touch with their feelings, is there's a set of questions that I'm happy to share on the social media platform is Jazba_coaching. And this platform was really created, for me at least, to share ways in which we can self-heal. So I'm not even saying go and get therapy, because I know how hard it is. I'm that typical avoidant type. So I'm creating a space where I'm saying, here's different ways for you to connect with yourself. And the other thing that really, I was trying to say that there's some questions that you could ask yourself to help you write the things that you're feeling, which is, how am I feeling today? What am I grateful for? What do I want to achieve? So now we're not even talking about feelings. We're just literally very much goal setting. And then automatically we start getting comfortable with asking, what am I grateful for? The day is nice. I don't know. I am alive. Woohoo. I don't know. But slowly, you start becoming a little bit more deeper into your thought process and say, actually, do you know what? I'm really grateful for my family. I'm really grateful for that text message that my friend sent me 2 months ago. It doesn't matter how long ago it was. And then slowly you start realizing, wow, I have so much going, but I just didn't see it before. The second thing for me was visualization. I had to do an exercise in my coaching practice where I had to close my eyes and have somebody guide me towards where I potentially wanted to be and what had happened to me in my past. And that was powerful because my eyes were closed and it was only a voice, a physical voice, which means that nor do I have to look at their facial expressions, and nor do I have to feel like I'm being judged for the things I'm saying. And therefore it allowed me to open my mouth slowly but surely to talk about things. And slowly it allowed me to still continue working with that individual as my coach, because I was able to open up with him through my eyes being closed and him asking me the questions and me just answering. So now I'm just literally talking to a voice rather than him physically being present and me looking at his face, looking at maybe thinking about the judgment, when actually that all wasn't even there in the first place.
Okay, awesome. Those are also good tips. Okay. So let me ask you this. Where can the audience find you?
Jasper_coaching is on Instagram. I also have a podcast. The podcast is a different twist. The podcast is discussing taboo subjects that we just don't talk about. So it could be anything from why do we not orgasm, to sexual harassment in a workplace, to hypnotherapy, to why or how a boss not behaving in an appropriate way can leave that trauma with you for the rest of your working life.
Yeah.
And it just carries on. So that podcast was really created. So it's called Jazzbar Podcast. It's available on Apple, Spotify, everywhere. You just literally have to find it there. It was really designed to allow people to start connecting with the parts of themselves that they struggle to talk about. And that's where the podcast came from. The Instagram posting, which is Jasper_coaching, is really designed for you to become a self-healer, somebody who can heal themselves and have the power And all I'm doing is facilitating the tools on that
That's
posting.
awesome.
So whether I'm touching on 50 Shades of Grey and why it's so not just necessarily disturbing, but I'm almost kind of showing you a different perspective of the exact same stuff that you've been watching all these years, but from an angle that is probably actually more visual, such as this person is an avoidant type. If you want somebody who doesn't want to sleep with you at nighttime, and I mean not just sex, but actually being intimate with you afterwards, and that could just be hugging or physically being present, might not be the type of relationship that's going to be healthy for you or serve you in the near future. But if you look at from the outset, 50 Shades of Grey, not only did it make lots of money, it's actually idolized as the sexy, perfect, handsome, rich man that we desire. And unfortunately, it's disturbing, but we just don't recognize it until somebody doesn't kind of show us. So the Instagram posting is really there for us to understand different perspectives on the same things that you already know. I'm not educating you on things you don't already know. I'm just merely sharing a different side of the same story.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Let me ask you some questions. So, as far as dating, if you could name 3 places you would want to go on a date with someone
3 places, like as in physically?
physically.
I mean, with COVID at the moment, I think it's safe to say that, parks are a really great way to kind of go for a very nice long walk, and it gets you to explore different parts um, of yourself, and really understand each other's value, because really there, what you're having is a conversation,
Right.
and that conversation can lead you to anywhere really. But for me, I would say parks is a great way to start, because it allows you to share experiences as well, personal stories, things that have happened to you in the past, funny stories with your friends, your family, your childhood, anything that allows the conversation to flow. And if this is something that doesn't come naturally to you, I would suggest that you prepare almost like you would for a job interview. Um, Prepare what you're willing to share about yourself in advance. And I don't mean this in a calculated way. What I mean to say is that, by having the stories or the experiences that you'd like to share in advance, whether it is a walk in the park or a riverside, it will allow you to feel a bit more relaxed and enjoy the present moment for what it is, as opposed to thinking about what should I say now, because you've already prepared what you're willing to bring to the table.
Right.
So hopefully that gives you a very long answer to your short question.
That's one place. Do you have 2 other places you would want to go on a date with anybody? Or no? Is the park just that's it? Because I know that's my number one, and that's usually what I stick to when someone asks me that. Because everywhere else is like you go out to eat. I know me, I'm interested in my food. I'm not interested in anything else. And then a movie, you can't really get to know anybody at the movie. So it's I don't know. Do you have any other places, or that's probably just your number one and that's it?
I mean, I'm only saying parks because of the circumstances that we're in at the moment, but I think just going for a long walk in a new area could be really
Okay.
simple. For me, I love walking. So
Okay.
it doesn't have to be just so specific to a park, but it could just be a way of exploring a new area in your hometown that you've never seen before, and and just exploring that with somebody, on a date, because
Okay.
then it takes the edge off of having to sit across somebody on a table
Right.
dressed up, dolled up in a way that might make you feel comfortable or uncomfortable. It's very individual. For me personally, I don't like doing the whole let's dress up and go on a date, because I like to qualify somebody.
Gotcha.
So what I mean by that is I probably shouldn't be going on a date with them if I've never had a conversation with them on a phone, or even better, some sort of a Zoom call or a FaceTime, because then you're just saving yourself so much time and energy of having to be anxious and get ready, and you don't even know what they look like, and you're just going
Right.
through pictures. By doing the whole FaceTime or Zoom call like we're on right now, it eliminates the bullshit, and then you will know
Right.
exactly what you're getting yourself into, and you're not wasting your time.
Right.
And we don't have time in today's day and age to explore on other people to see whether they're good enough or not. You need to show up for yourself and have the confidence to suggest you good for a phone call, you good for a FaceTime, and dole up for that FaceTime or for that Zoom call, and then have a picnic with your friends later anyway, because that way you know what you're getting yourself into.
Right.
If you like him enough on FaceTime or Zoom or whatever it is, you're automatically going to find yourself wanting to meet them even more. Or actually, you don't want to waste your time any further, and you can just stop it right there and there,
Right
and
there.
you don't have to go through the whole process of going there, going for that long walk, having to force a conversation. There's no connection, and then you didn't like them in the first place anyway. So
Right.
yeah.
Got you. All right. So my last question, do you have a first memory as far as like romance, whether it's your first kiss or maybe a first love letter in school or anything like that you wouldn't mind sharing with the audience?
It's a great question. I have so many. First. I think I when I was growing up, I was extremely traditional. So my first would have been very, very different to how I show up today. My first was very calculated in the sense of I was only able to date or see certain type of men. And so because I was conditioned to only feel for those type of men, I thought that's what I liked. And so everyone that I've ever dated or seen in that light, or the first interactions that I've had with the opposite sex, has always been based on the fact that I can only bring them this type at home. And so it wasn't very much because their qualities were good, or they spoke in a certain way, or they were kind, or, you know, I like the way that they are fully present when they're with me and not scrolling on their phone, or, you know, that I can be myself completely. I was showing up a long time ago for completely the wrong type of people because I was told that that's what I'm allowed to like. And so I thought that's what I liked. The truth is I never knew what I liked, but I'm only learning that now. So actually it's not a fun story, sadly, but that's where the kind of attachment theories come into play, where once you start recognizing where you fall, you can overcome them, and you can learn how to get to that next step. So if anybody wants to take anything away from this conversation, number one, just try your very best to write things down that you're grateful for, and start that journal, and do it as an exercise for at least 3 months, and then go back on yourself for those 3 months and just see what you've written down. You would find that you've changed so much without you even realizing. And I found that with myself, that I had no idea just how fast I'm changing and how quickly I'm progressing to my higher self, if it wasn't for that stupid journal, which I used to think was extremely stupid. And now I'm like, there is some theory to this madness, and I'm endorsing it everywhere. And if you are somebody who's interested in exploring yourself, I'm very much available for a discovery call to see if you would like to work with me on a one-on-one basis. And the whole idea of my work is very much based around being your true authentic self and being in the present moment. So what I do is offer different perspectives and provide structure. And a lot of my work is around reflection and mirroring back to you some of the things that you say by asking you certain questions. What I don't do is do your work for you, and I don't judge you, and I don't label you in a specific category and tell you this is what your attachment theory is. What I can say is that this is not a space if you're here for advice financially or legally, but this is a space if you want to start taking responsibility for your own actions in your life. And it could be just as little as investing in yourself by say, I'm going to dedicate 6 sessions with a specific coach or a specific therapist by just understanding what my blind spots are because I don't know what they are, then then I'd be open for that conversation. And if not anything else, I'm pretty happy to connect with you. So my bio is available on jasper_coaching on Instagram, where you can just look at my calendar, see your free slot, find yourself there, click on it, and it's really investing the time in yourself more than anything else.
Right. And all of that will be in the show notes. Razia, I want to thank you for coming on. It was such a pleasure to have you.
No, I can't thank you enough for showing up for me, for asking great questions, and for having this platform to allow people to really connect with their higher selves. Thank you for the work you're doing. It's incredible.
Oh, no, thank you so much. And I want to thank all of the listeners as well for tuning in today. And until next time.
Thank you for tuning in to today's show. If you liked this podcast, please download and subscribe. If there's anything you would like to talk about in regards to relationships, or would like to be a guest on the show to speak on relationships or get advice, you can always connect via social media at Playing for Keeps or email DJ at info@p4kdating.com. Thank you for tuning in, and bye for now.